Okay, well, our talk this morning about sex is going to be a very sober discussion, one that's, at the top of everybody's minds, whether you get up on the morning and you go to work, you're a parent, a teacher, it's at the top of your head. And our guest this morning is Anna Maria Mora. Anna Maria is a trained teacher and also worked as a guidance officer in the school system. She has a master's and an M.Ed in psychological counseling from Columbia University in New York. On her return to Trinidad, she founded the Mariama Children's Museum and Teen Turf. It's a counseling and activity center for children and adolescents. And Mariana, as I must tell you now, is 25 years in operation, so she has a wealth of experience. She's author of the book Parents, Are You Listening?, which was written in 1995. And now she is turning it around, and it's relevant to our discussion today. She's waiting to publish her second book, Children, Are You Listening? Mr. Bishop.
Well, I had the pleasure of getting the sunshine as I came up this morning, so I'm glad she is here. And the book is Parents First and Now Children, Are You Listening? And I inquired of our guest early, Anna Maria, is it that the parents are not speaking the language for the children to listen?
Well, I think most parents are in denial because it is very difficult to look at your child and think that he or she is growing into a person who has his or her own opinions, thoughts, everything that a young adult hopefully would have. But I don't think parents engage their children in discussions, in dialogue, because I guess parents just think I am the authority and what I say you have to do because I'm paying the rent and providing your food and your clothes, so you have to do my bidding. That's what some of the complaints that we have from young people.
At the end of the day, the problem is going to be whether parents decide we're going to find innovative ways to have this discussion, we're going to have honest ways to have this discussion, or we're going to do the ostrich thing. And even when I look at the statements from the Tobago House of Assembly Chief Secretary Orville Nelson saying it's 4 years ago, we have dispensed with that. We have not dispensed with that. It is a growing situation.
It is growing. One of the things about adolescence is that, when you're born as a baby, your circulatory system, digestive system, and respiratory system come into play at birth. Breathing, blood flow, and the blood, the breathing, and digestive. As you hit puberty, it's the reproductive system. And it's 9 for girls and about 11 for boys. So that with that reproductive system comes all the hormonal changes, all the new feelings and attractions to the opposite sex. It's natural. And I don't think as a society or even in the home we are dealing with that with young people. And the most important thing for young people at that age is that what we have to help them to sublimate, which means to find socially acceptable ways to handle that sexual energy that they have, which is normal, socially acceptable ways. So we have to have activities for young people. We cannot leave young people unsupervised in classrooms. It is going to be natural if there's no supervision or nothing productive to do. They are going to jump on one another.
It is amazing because the more liberal and the more information come to us about sex, for some reason, parents or those in that role, guardians be it, find it more and more difficult to have a conversation. That is amazing to me because it's almost as though the media is assisting, the society is assisting you in opening the conversation. Why is it then folks find it still so taboo to initiate a conversation freely?
I think we have denial as a as a defense mechanism that you put around your reality system so that you wouldn't have to deal with it. And I just want to read a poem that a young person, a 14-year-old, wrote about people. When I was at Arima Senior Camp as the guidance officer, I realized that it was so difficult for young people to communicate with adults. They didn't trust teachers because they felt that teachers would have their business in the staff room. Now, I was guidance officer. My office was not near the staff room. I made sure that that was what happened. And when I got to Arima, I realized that there was this, lack of communication in the home and in schools. And I decided to have a project called The Search for Self, right? And invited young people to write or to do art and tell us as adults what they wanted to tell us. One young lady brought a copybook full of poetry she had already written. She was just waiting on something to happen. And this one, who was 14 at the time, wrote this about people. And she said, "People are not what they pretend to be. They hide their true feelings for no one else to see. They pretend to feel what they don't, so no one will really know the real them. People want to be loved, but are afraid of being rejected. Their hearts scream out to be needed by someone, but they keep it inside, so no one knows what they need or want. They put on false moods, pretending to be happy when they are not. They hide from what reality is. They live in their own dreams. They accept everything else but theirs. They live the lives of others. They don't know what true happiness means, so I guess people just don't like being people, it seems." That is a 14-year-old who, this poem just changed my view of young people. And I kept meeting that theme all along with young people, that adults are hypocrites. We're not real. They ask parents to be real with them. There was a time I did a project at Barataria when I was there, and I asked them to do a little skit telling parents and the whole skit was about parents not saying sorry for mistakes that they would have made, and expect young people and children to be saying sorry for everything.
Unfortunately, there is no school for parenting, so it becomes a problem. Anna Marie Mora is the voice you're hearing, a trained teacher, also worked as a guidance officer in the school system. She's our guest this morning, and we're talking about sex in school.
And this is just, when we look at the problems being posed by teenagers today, and I'm looking sex in schools. We have it now. I was speaking to a primary school principal recently, and she's saying that she has to deal with it at the age of 8, 9, and 11.
Course,
so by the time it gets to the secondary school, that's where it becomes almost an industry among teenagers, where they make pornographic material. They sell videotapes via Bluetooth for money. What you started the Mariama Center 25 years ago. Between then and now, what could have happened to make the problems as gross as they are now? Because we've always had a lack of parenting skills somewhere along the way.
But I think too, well, of course we know the social media and I've been checking on our television stations, and many of our shows that are done at prime time when children are up and maybe watching television without any supervision. It's a lot of, you have Scandal, you have The Following, you have How to Get Away with Murder, you have, you can call the whole range of these television shows that really don't help our young people to make the best choices. And if you are doing that over and over, plus the music, you played Let's Talk About Sex. I think it was some years ago when we were younger, it was I Want Your Sex.
George Michaels, yes.
George Michaels, yes. And now we have those dancehall artists, and, so that young people are being bombarded, and they're at an age where their sex I'm not saying sexuality, because sexuality is an attitude to your femininity and masculinity. Their whole sexiness is like taking over at that age. And they need help. They need help. And I say, if parents are not doing it, there must be some community, somewhere in the community where young people can go.
And even a place for parents to go, because at the end of the day, it is one thing to speak of the kids' behavior. You said they're bombarded with too much information all about sex, and we understand that, without context. And I wonder if it is not useful to think of having some groups set up to assist parents in understanding, because most of them just discovered their own sexuality and became mothers and fathers.
Thank you very much. And it's it's the circumstance under which they became. I had a colleague who would say the only thing that qualifies us to be parents is our biology, and we must get a little dark corner somewhere. This is how he put it very clearly. And I don't really, I know you said the problem with teenagers and their problems are our problems, so that we really have to take this thing. You quoted Mr. London as saying it's 4 years ago. I didn't hear that, but apparently, and why are we bringing it up now? But it keeps coming up in our faces all the time. And I was doing some research, and I found where there is now a humanities curriculum in schools in New York and in Ohio. They have humanities as the core. Health and wellness, they have visual arts, performing arts, math and English, yes, but they have this social studies, social science. That is the core of the curriculum now. And listen to this: habits of mind and work. In this process, students deepen their understanding of habits of work, punctuality, organization, cooperation, revision, and focus. While courses at this school all cover unique content, one thing is similar throughout. This is the focus on developing students. As such, every course curricula is created to develop following thinking routines: habits of mind, using evidence. How well does the student use evidence to support his or her opinions? Okay? Considering viewpoints. Does the student consider other viewpoints or points of view? Making connections. Can the students make connections between different topics, areas, and courses? Seeking significance. Is the student able to see the relevance of their studies? A lot of our young people say, why are we studying all of this? Nothing really, so that they just drop out. They might be there physically, but the teacher just maybe teaching or talking to 5 students who they might consider bright, and the next 25 just doing, I'm sure you are aware of that the teachers would say, look, just give me the 10 students who paying attention to me, yes, and the rest, that is it. So that there is a way. We have been talking and asking for a revision of our curriculum and have a humanities base to it, and really help young people. They talk about asking what if. Does the student see various factors in an argument and ask, what if something were to change this argument? Those, and they have student portfolios. They don't have these exams at the end of the term, every term. The students have to submit portfolios. They have student seminars where they would be talking about relevant issues that are happening in the society, so that they will have some kind of sense of their world and what is happening. Like, we would bring young people here maybe to discuss this whole issue about sex and the problems that that some of these schools are finding themselves in.
I noticed I inquired of you the possibility of some sort of sessions for parents, and you went back into schools because, yes, that is where the real problem is. Is it because you think that the issue of the parents is something should be dealt with from a different level? I tend to think that the problem starts at home. And as such, I am thinking that is where I should be. But with your experience, you're saying we should let that be another department and worry about this one here in the schools?
No. We need to. There are the ministries. I know the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development, the Ministry of Social Development, People and Social Development. They've been running parenting programs, but it is supposed to be national, but they are doing it in, I know they had some in the rural communities, some of these parenting programs in Sandy Grande and Moruga down in the south. They've been doing some. But I'm not sure if it's not as widespread as it should be. Just as we have schools in every community, there should be a parenting program in every community.
What we're looking at within the schools themselves. At the primary school level, I'm told if there's a guidance officer, there's one for several schools in an area, which is definitely inadequate.
Yeah.
And then the problem is, you have the problem. The problem is born, bred, nurtured there because nobody's taking care of it. The seed is planted there. And it comes to the secondary school system, and there may be one guidance officer per school who is, with all due respect to the people who are trying out there, in most instances, sometimes the ministry, in a bid to just pull people together to make it appear as if they're dealing with the problem, would employ retired teachers who are not wholly trained for this kind of job. So given that, we do have a problem. So as much as you're saying that let's go and have, we expect them to have the vision to change the curriculum, what do we do to address the current situation as it is now? Because parenting now, after the fact, where we have all these young people, case in point, the sex tape, the sex scandal at Cunupia High School, Mr. Bishop, where
that is clearly unsupervision, no supervision, because there was no teacher. I spoke to someone who has children going to Cunupia High, and the teachers are hardly ever in school, and I mean, these are some of the things I know maybe the Ministry of Education has been trying to. I understand that there is an online, they have invited people who would like to become substitute teachers to register online. I'm not sure what is happening with that. You know, there are some piecemeal things that are not being properly instituted, just as you said rightly, that it's just being said out there to keep people, okay, something is being done, but nothing after that.
Anne-Marie Mora is the voice you're hearing here, guidance officer in the school system. She has an MA and an MED in psychological counseling from Columbia University in New York. We're talking about sex in schools. You just made an indictment of the system by saying that it's a matter of supervision. Is this supervision born of indifference, inadequate staffing, or is it born of what?
Well, listen, this has been an issue that has been there ever since I was part of, in the system. And many of us would have left because we felt that we could have done something to help the situation. So people would have gone and set up their own youth programs and what have you with their own energies and finances and everything, because it was getting to be extremely, I mean, I left because I had a fight with the principal. Well, not physical fight, but a young man was found jiggling 25 cents from a phone booth on Frederick Street when there were phone booths. And he probably got about $25.25, but the police caught him and brought him into school. And I told the principal, listen, I did not want him suspended because I needed him in school to work with. I can't go by the side of the road and sit down with him or in his house. Please, let us keep him here, and I would work with him. And we had this big, well, it's a little argument, the father and everybody in the room, and he ended up at YTC, and there were several young people who we realized there was this, we call it musical chairs of suspension, because they suspend them for 7 days without any intervention. And they come back in the school, they do the same thing again, they are suspended again. And then they develop a reputation that the teachers, nobody wants them in the class.
That is amazing, because they would receive excellent counseling and guidance at YTC, wouldn't they?
Okay.
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
been there, right?
No, because my point is, you put a kid in that environment, what are you expecting to bring back out? What are you expecting to come back out? I am in total concurrence with you.
Years ago, it was difficult for a young person at YTC. But today, things have changed a little bit, where they do receive, and there's YTEP. There are a lot of programs in YTC to support the young men. And many of them are doing very well. They have football. They're part of the football leagues, and many of them are doing well. So that things have changed a little bit at YTC for young men.
You made the point about guidance counselor. Does every school have a guidance counselor?
No.
Who evaluates the progress? So speak to us about that.
No, every school... Because, as Sharmain said, they have one guidance officer to about 5 primary schools. We still have guidance officers in secondary schools. When I was there, it was one guidance officer for 1,700 students. And that is still, operating. I mean, when I went to study, you had a guidance department in a high school, where you had social workers, educational psychologists, social psychologists, counseling psychologists, in a department that supported the school. If there was a problem, teachers knew where to send this child. Teachers knew that this child would have been attended to, because there would have been social workers who would be in touch with family, who would go out there, see what is happening in the home. And this department was a building on the school compound.
And they would work closely with the police out there as well.
Yeah, but you see, the focus really, for me, this is my view of it, that if we look at young people as potential criminals, we are going to populate our schools and streets with police following and harassing young people. Because we look at them as potential criminals.
As it's happening already.
If we look at them as potentially productive citizens of this country, we are going to put things in place. More social workers, more guidance officers, more trained counselors. We would put things, more activities, extracurricular activities, which would be subsidized, because the children who really need it cannot afford to purchase the hockey sticks, the football togs, and they need to be subsidized.
Hence the reason I say it's an indictment of the system. I mean, the Minister of Education said that it's estimated that 25,000 teenage pregnancies are there per year, and he's saying that by the time young girls reach 19, an estimated 1,000 girls per year would have already had 4 pregnancies. We are looking at a staggering statistic that the ministry is aware of.
I mean, I did a little over the years talking to young people. Why do young people, it had to do with teenage pregnancy, but ended up with, having sexual intercourse and what have you. One of the things is said they had nothing to do, no supervision, boredom, didn't know how to say no to peer pressure, to the pressure, unable to control the feeling too, forced into it by an adult. Curiosity, wanted to experience what it was like, needed money to help take care of brothers and sisters, needed to feel loved and wanted by someone, just felt like having sex, thought he or she was in love, everybody else was doing it, to be popular. These are and of course some say they don't know why, but that's fine. But, those are some of the reasons why. And we really do have to pay attention and put things in place to help in communities. You are going.
As a further breakdown, and that we also have to address as well, as a consequence of teenage pregnancies, we've lost the value of a grandmother as she was in our society when we were growing up. So therefore we have grandmothers now who are about in their early 30s and who cannot give the guidance as a backup or fallback for the teenager.
And that is why I keep saying and proposing that we must begin again to look at community as family. Community as family. I mean, people saying in this day and age, girl, you want to. Now, my thing is, you have a man, okay, it's the reality in Trinidad and Tobago and elsewhere in the world, I'm sure, who has like 3 women with 3 different set of children, right? And he decides he meets a 4th woman who might be his soulmate, oh Lord. So he marries her, okay? And he has these other 3 sets of children who need to be cared for and nurtured. But this woman now, who he has married and is having children, does not want him to have anything to do with the mother or with those children because she feels he's still with the mothers. Now, sometimes these children are in the same class, all of them same age. And seeing, okay, he married this woman who he is taking care of those children. So those children have fancy lunch kit and they have fancy shoes and their shirts pressed and looking good. And look at how, we had to go to school with a torn-up shoe. And there's this whole big resentment and children who are not being cared for because of this dotishness. Which home do we want this man to go back in? We keep wanting fathers back in homes. Which home we want him to go back in? I can't understand for the life of me how we keep saying that. And that is why we have to look at community. There are people who would have set up their homes where young women, who I know one young woman, she's married with her own children, but she's opening up her home to young women who are lost and who really don't have any support, and she's bringing them into her home and taking care of them, and this is she's creating a community. She is creating a community where young women can feel loved. They can learn how to be responsible young women, and because she herself as a child was sexually molested by a stepfather, and she really had serious issues growing up, but she has now dealt with it. She has a spiritual director who works with her. She's married, and she's really now looking to help young women who might find themselves in the situation that she had found herself. She has opened her home to them. I brought this suggestion many years ago to a very prestige primary school, Sharmain, prestige primary school, about opening up your homes. If you notice a neighbor who might be a security guard, a single parent, their child has their own key, coming home, going to the fridge for frozen food or whatever, and microwave, bringing themselves home, looking after. You have a 10-year-old with the little ones, making sure they have to pick them up from school. What is the problem? You are at home, being taken care of. You're not, working, but you have a family, your husband, and whatever. What is the problem with inviting, going and say, listen, I noticed that your children are coming home to their, on their own. Do you have any objection to me inviting them? You can bring their clothes. I will have them until you come home, like about 8, 8:30. So they'll have a shower. I'll let them do their homework. And when you come, it will be just to maybe look over their homework and they can go to bed.
That is precisely
What
why.
is the problem with that? Ooh! That was a bacchanal.
I remember,
in the PTA meeting.
And I go back to that all the time because at the end of the day, we are on the same page. Half the population now, it is preferred live in single-parent homes. And this area of community is something that we must revisit, because all you can do anything from the end of the stick.
Yeah.
If the top of the stick is where the problem is, people in communities don't want to work together because I barely know you. I see you and I may bow my head,
And
acknowledge you. But
suspicious. One parent said, I don't want to son coming wrong my door, because I don't know what is. I say, but if you don't know, you need to get to know. And if you feel that you teach your children the best, why don't you help teach somebody else's child?
There's also the problem. It's not just a community issue in the lower and the middle classes as well, but via the Eston Center, which you may know about. It's a Catholic center. I've had the experience of being there for one session. Wonderful work with parents, and these are people who are well-to-do and capable of working with their children.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there, the same thing that you're saying. These are parents who can afford to give their time and perhaps other resources. And they're sitting there. And this is not passed on to a school. This is not passed on to any other area. So there are pockets of good everywhere. Who is going to bring all that together?
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, if the children who are in that sex ring at Cunupia High School are brought to the Mariama Center, how are you going to treat with them? How are you going to deal with them?
Well, I do have I have a booklet here actually. I had done something for Carnival in 2014 with 20 young people called Life After Fete. There's Life After Carnival. And we looked at promiscuity, we looked at the different grades of intimacy. The whole thing about a whole hand, no problem with that, Get whole hands, a kiss on the cheek. That's a little very not dangerous. That's comfortable. Once you start petting and necking and thing, it start to get a little
hormones go wild.
Dicey. Of course, they didn't know what petting was, and they didn't know. Well, they had other names for it, and necking. Okay? And then it starts to get, now there's a graph with this, There's a graph that you can look at where it's very clear here, and then it starts to get gray with the necking and the petting, and then it gets darker with the French kissing, and then dark area, danger. And there is a curriculum for young people. I had done a program this was in the 1990s, years ago, on sex, lies, and the truth. It is a curriculum. It was brought out by the Family Focus Network. And it goes from the beginning as to the human person is made up of social, ethical, physical, all the different parts of the human person. There is a curriculum that could be used. And that is the one I use when I bring young people to the Mariama Center. And looking at the fact that our personality is made up of the technical terms are id, ego, and superego, but it is pleasure, reality, and morality. We are basically selfish people. We are basically animals. I ask them what species, what classification of animal we belong to. They can't answer. But we are mammals. Just like dogs and cats. Warm-blooded, suckle our young, have hair at some point in our lives. But we were created with two things that make us higher than the animals, and they are the power to think and the power to choose our good. Power to think and to choose our good. Of course, parents don't understand that, because parents want to choose for children like all the time. So they do not encourage them to think for themselves and to understand what their good, learn what your good is, and make some choices. All that has to start with a conversation and dialogue in wherever young people find themselves.
107.7, you're having brunch with us. Our guest, the voice you're hearing, is that of Anne Maria Mora. She's the founder of the Mariama Children Museum and Teen Turf. the Counseling and Activity Center for Children and Adolescents. She's been doing this for 25 years, so we are privileged indeed to have her here. I applaud rather, the parent of the child in Cunupia, because he said he recognized strange behavior and that moved him on. So it is good to see parents stepping up. But a lot of parents equally echo what I have heard some educators say, that the police, when the kids feel that if in fact they report an abuse or an overture or so on, it goes into the counselor's hands. It possibly goes into the police situation, and because they love their folks, even though the act was dastardly against them, they will not come forward. The role of the police in this, particularly in the schools, explain that for us, please.
I mean, it is very, very difficult. I got a call this about 2 days ago about a young woman who, she's 12 and is being interfered with by a stepfather. Her sister before that had problems, had a baby, and is very angry because there was a report made, but nothing was done. From pillar to post, these young people went and nothing was done, because there is the victim support unit, of course the police. It is extremely, extremely difficult. It seems the system is, we might have what we call the structures, but not the working system to help these young people who make these complaints. When we go to schools, or when the guidance officer or anyone who is invited into the school to talk to young people and to children about these things, after the lecture is done, there is a line of children waiting to come to see the person, to tell them who feel them up, who this, who that. And I mean, I don't think there is enough of the personnel to deal with it, and the trained personnel. I was told, yes, the victim support unit is there, but they do not have the personnel or the social workers who are the ones who would go into the homes to make a check and to see what is going on. And
to have conversations with the parents, because, as I said, it seems as though we have the victims that we look after, even though from your statement this morning and what we commonly believe, we don't have sufficient support in those areas. But you go from the victims, and the next thing is you go to the police.
Yeah.
And somewhere in between there, as far as the parents are concerned, I believe you must have some mediation group, something in the center there to work between the guidance counselor getting the complaint and in short staff trying to deal with the child and somebody.
Sometimes if it's a stepfather, the mother knows. Many times the mother knows what's going on. And it's extremely, extremely difficult in situations like that. And we have been taught that you must take the child's word for it, because children will not lie about this. One of the first things I ask people to do, or parents or anybody, make sure that child has a gynecological exam. So the parent cannot say she lying on him and want to create confusion. The violence we see in our society, because we have no sense of control, internal sense of control, is what we see here. We always feel that we have to beat people to control them. And there is another way we're dialoguing, and there can be discipline where, you maybe something a child likes, you keep it away from them for a little while, let them understand that. But we used to beat with hibiscus whip. We go and pick the fencing whip by the school. Come and bring it for me. I get plenty licks, eh? But the point about it is...
Yes, I got the aversion earlier.
No, listen. No. But for me, it did not help me. am a late developer. And it is because, I know it is because I was into a lot of things and I got plenty licks, and I was a frightened child. Frightened in secondary school, didn't understand who I was or what I was about to, what I was doing. It was not until I went to do psychology that I was able to come out and understand my talents and my abilities. And that is what licks does. It just sends you inside yourself. And you're afraid to do anything. Yes, he talks about fear, but is it that we would be afraid to talk with our parents and dialogue and tell? I wanted to be able to say, gosh, look at a fella. I was coming up from school and a fella suit me, mommy, and he trying to call me. Can't I go and tell? I should be able to go and tell my mom or my dad or my aunt, and they should be able to sit with me and say, listen to me. This is something that, look at you. You're growing up, put me in front of a mirror. You're grounding off in all the right places. And you have to understand who you are becoming as a young woman. What is the problem with that?
There is not a problem with that. It is one of the reasons that we open all the conversations. And once you get into the area of bringing back a little punishment
and
at home, it's going to be a total different conversation.
I have somebody to give you all that.
Unfortunately, we have exhausted our time in here this morning. Anna Marie Mora, has been very kind of you to take your time. Trained teacher, guidance counselor, founder of the Mariama Children Museum. And you've been doing this for quite some time. The book that's coming out, we will await it, is Children, Are You Listening?
And life is a balancing act. That is the
indeed.
Subtitle.
I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
You have
You're
yourself
welcome.
a wonderful.
Good to have you here.
Yeah.
And thank you very much.